Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host Holly Wharton. Ready to Bloom helps heart-centered women entrepreneurs to overcome their fears, blocks and limiting beliefs so they can be more successful in business. As a heart-centered business owner, you do amazing work. Holly's mission in life is to help you help more people. Help us help more women in business with a quick review of this podcast. It just takes a minute to leave one today over at iTunes. The more women who find out about this podcast, the more we can help women in business. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Ready to Bloom podcast, episode 85. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm here with today's special guest, Joanna Penn from The Creative Penn. Joanna is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling thriller author. She also writes nonfiction for authors. Joanna is a professional speaker and entrepreneur and was voted one of the Guardian UK Top 100 Creative Professionals in 2013. Joanna's site, thecreativepenn.com, helps people with information and inspiration on writing, self-publishing, book marketing, and creative entrepreneurship. Welcome, Joanna.
Thanks for having me, Holly. It's so great to be on the show.
I'm so excited to speak with you today. So, I've been following you for years, so even though I did meet you at one point at the London Book Fair, it's great to be sharing you with my listeners. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So I'm coming up to my 40th birthday very soon. And it's funny because, you think about points in your life. And when I was 25 was the first time I resigned my job to change my life. And it actually took another 10 years after that. And I'm just thinking I'm pretty happy to be coming up to 40 doing something I love. But I actually, like many people, started, falling into a job in order to pay off the student loan. I did a degree in theology and then I became a management consultant, which is one of those classic kind of shifts, and ended up sort of implementing financial systems into large corporates, so working in Europe and Asia Pacific and sometimes in America in accounts payable departments. I mean, you can't imagine anything so boring, really. But it paid well. This is the thing, these jobs that pay well, you become a specialist. I actually did that for 13 years. But the number of times that I resigned, so, the first time at 25, and I resigned every couple of years, went traveling, started other businesses. I did a scuba diving business. I did property investment, tried loads of other stuff. None of them worked, always ended up going back to the day job. And then in, sort of 2006, 2007, I was just like, this is crazy, this cycle of back to the day job, earn some money, resign because I don't know what to do with my life. This kind of cycle is crazy. So I wrote a book. I decided that I would write a book on how to enjoy your job because I just couldn't figure out why an intelligent woman like myself could not find what I wanted to do with my life. And that book got me into writing and self-publishing, and I started the Creative Penn with a double N, and started my journey of kind of learning, and then learned about marketing, and eventually started writing fiction. And I finally left the job for good in September 2011, and now I'm, as you said, all those things that you said, that's what I now do. So I call myself an author entrepreneur because I'm a businesswoman as well as an author. But it feels like a really long journey to what I wanted to do with my life, and then sometimes I feel just incredibly lucky that, I have found what I want to do until the day I die. Oh,
that's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And at what point did you realize that writing was your thing?
Well, I think I always did write. I mean, next to my desk here, I've got probably 30 notebooks that I've been keeping over the years. I mean, I journal, and so I always wrote journals. I was at Oxford, so my degree in theology was all about writing essays and, a thesis. And then as a consultant, I just wrote documents. So my living and, my fun, I guess, has always been around writing. I had just never kind of put that into book form. And, I can't even remember why I decided to write a book rather than, I think it was really, I was just so frustrated. I thought, I want to help myself and other people discover what they want to do with their life. So I'll kind of write like a thesis on it, and then maybe someone will want to publish it. And of course they didn't, but that's another story. But interestingly, it was around the same time as Tim Ferriss did the 4-Hour Work Week, when Gary Vaynerchuk did his big one, whose title I can't remember now, Crush It. It was, I think there was a zeitgeist kind of 2007, 2008, also with the global financial crisis. So all of that kind of stuff, and a lot of people around the world changed their lives at that time, either because they were laid off or they just realized that things were not as they wanted. So anyway, I think I've always been a writer of sorts. It just kind of crystallized into the business over time. And I would say also, because I know a lot of your listeners are business women, the other things I learned as in my other failures, in a good sense, I believe failure is a good thing. But, for example, a scuba diving company, the amount of money that you need to run a physical business. So you need, a boat and some fuel and some employees, and it's very dependent on the weather, and property, again, very physically dependent on stuff. And what I discovered out of that is I didn't want to do that with my life. I wanted to be location independent. So writing is one of those perfect sort of jobs where you don't need anything but a laptop. So it was once I identified how I wanted to live my life, and that helped me design the business that fitted what I wanted.
Yeah, that really makes sense. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you experienced when you started to put your writing out there? With your first book that you said you thought it would be published and it wasn't, so you moved to self-publishing. What were the big challenges there?
That decision was more that I don't have any patience, and when I learned about the publishing industry and how slow things are, I just thought, I'm not up for slow things, and also I don't like asking permission, and I don't work, I don't work well under authority, so none of that was never going to work for me. So that was kind of a decision. But in terms of I think the biggest realization that anyone who publishes a book has is that it doesn't fly off the shelves. And it's probably the same with any business. You start a coaching business or whatever, and then you realize you don't have any clients, or, you run a scuba diving company and nobody books your trips. And it's basically marketing. The world doesn't know you are there. And I had this realization as soon, I actually, at the time I was printing. This was before Kindle, before print on demand really took off. So I actually printed 2,000 books, like really big mistake, expensive mistake. And there's this brilliant picture of me looking very proud, standing by this pile. And I think about half an hour later, I realized, how do I sell this? So that started. What's so interesting is that started me on this new journey. So I just learned how to write a book, how to publish a book, and now I needed to learn how to market a book. And amusingly, now I have a book called How to Market a Book, and I teach internationally on book marketing. So that learning, I think these challenges we have can turn into our greatest opportunities over time. And I think when you shift your mindset on marketing from kind of thinking that it's spammy or sucky or whatever to, sharing what you love with people who want to hear about it and people who need it, then it becomes much easier for you. And that's when I started my podcast and my blog, and my marketing comes from inspiration and information being useful, really, which is fun to do. And I know you find that fun too. So, and this is marketing. What we're doing now is marketing in this new world. So it's great.
And was there kind of a tipping point in your business with your books when things started kind of going from struggle to flow, like once your marketing kind of picked up and people started realizing who you were and realizing that they liked your books?
Well, I think it's an interesting question, because it depends what your definition of success is, I suppose. I mean, you mentioned the word flow. I struggle with the word flow. I think business is just, it's an up and down thing, even every day. And I still have difficulties like we all do. I think in terms of being able to give up my job, I had set a income level, because obviously after 13 years as a business consultant, I was not willing to give up my job and fail again and have to go back. And, so I was already making a certain amount of money per month, from the website, from my writing, before I gave up my job, but it was still very small. And I said to my husband, look, I need 6 months of, with this salary kind of cut to attempt to see if this is going to work. And that was, I'd been working on the website, the podcast, everything online for 3 years part-time. So
excellent.
Every evening, every weekend, I'd gone to 4 days a week at work. So it took me 3 years. And I mean, amusingly, I'm always early on this stuff. So I started a podcast in 2009. I was way early with that, and too early for Kindle. I was all these things I was early with. But it all started to kind of, the fruit really started, I would probably say, not until a year after, so maybe mid 2012, as self-publishing became more trendy. This is what's so interesting in terms of the publishing industry. I started before it was acceptable, and now it's pretty much mainstream, certainly in the US and almost in the UK and Australia. And, there's still a snobbery of sorts, but really it's very mainstream. So, I would still say to people, look, I made a decision around my business, which is I don't want to have employees. I don't want to have physical location. I don't want to have physical stock. I made some certain decisions, and my business is scalable because I write books, but I'm still not at the point of where I was when I left my job. After 13 years as a specialist, and I'm now 3.5 years into this new career, I expect to equal that salary at year 5. Which I think is fair enough. And then I expect to surpass it because, as you know, as an entrepreneur, there is no upper limit. So the money side is certainly one thing.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that's very interesting that you spent 3 years building your community and your platform before you actually did leave that job.
Yeah, and that may be a risk thing, or the fact that I, so many times before I had to leave and go back, when the money ran out. And also when I started the Creative Pen, I really had no idea where it would go. And I often use the metaphor of skiing in that if you want to get from the top to the bottom, you don't go in a straight line. You have to start moving in one direction, and then you change direction, and then you change direction again. And sometimes you fall over, and, you get up, and some people zoom past you. And other people are still at the top, of the slope. And but that zigzag, I think, is the main point. And the other thing with skiing, in order to turn, you actually have to be moving. And I think people make the mistake sometimes of waiting too long, of standing still for too long. Whereas if you get moving, it's much easier to change direction. So I started the blog. It was my 3rd blog, and the other 2 had failed because I got bored. And, that's a good thing for people to know. If it's boring to you after a couple of months, then you are not going to sustain it through the hard times.
And maybe that just means it's not your thing.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with giving that up. And I with the Creative Pen, I'm heading towards year 6, and I have 6 months content planned. I have so much that I want to share with people. I never run out of stuff to share. So that's when that it's the thing for you. When you do not run out of stuff that you want to share, because it's your journey too. I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. So you essentially have either kind of a 2-sided business or 2 businesses, because you've got, for one side, the Creative Pen, which is where you work with authors and help them, and then you've got your fiction writing on the other side. How do you manage that? How do you balance that out in your mind? I'm showing my age again. I have a physical Filofax diary here on my desk. And what I do is I diarize my time according to the business. So over the last, few years, the Creative Pen has been kind of my primary thing. And the fiction, as I've been growing my craft and growing my fiction kind of skills and my fiction income. But this year, I'm really trying to pencil in a lot more for JF Pen, which is my dark side. And because they're so different, as in, I think, they're both part of me. We all have these different sides to ourselves. And, JF Pen allows me to
write in that dark side. More my books are, kind of Stephen King-ish, the supernatural thriller type books. There's lots of body count and dark stuff. And so I created another brand for that and the colors are very different. People can have a look at jfpen.com for that. And yeah, it is difficult to balance, and I have to do that stuff at a different time of day or a completely separate day, because I kind of go into that mode of creation, which is very different to this type of chat. And if we were talking about the fiction side, it would be more of a, talking to JF Penn. But my sort of Joanna Penn persona is the side that is more outwardly focused, helping people, providing information for people, public speaking. Whereas my fiction side is very much, that side is spent alone and more internally focused, and getting down to the deeper level of what's really important in life. So I love having both, actually. And I think what's interesting about where I've ended up is that I was only able to write fiction after my finding my voice almost with my nonfiction and the blog. And I think it just helps you relax, when you blog and write in that way, and you start sharing with things. And over the years, I've just stopped self-censoring because I realized that there are other people like me out there. So yeah, it's very satisfying having the dark side as well.
I love how you express that, kind of your dark side and your light side. So, Joanna, what would you say are your top tips on how to make a living as an author?
Ooh, it's a difficult one. Well, I think, first of all, it's the definition of living, as we mentioned. If you're a single person living in in the middle of nowhere, it's cheaper than I live in central London.
Yes.
So the definition of living is important. And then it's really about, look, if you want to make a living from your writing, it's a very different goal to wanting to win a literary prize, for example. So I would point people at a site called author-earnings.com.
Okay.
Which is an analysis of the top selling books on Amazon. So the thing is, if you want to make a living as an author, and I normally call it make a living with your writing, because that's a bit different. But as an author, that means selling books. Yeah. Now, if you want to sell books, you have to write books people want to buy. Mm-hmm. You can't force people to buy books. So in terms of fiction, you have to be writing regularly in popular genres. So the people making most money as authors are romance writers, because it's about 40% of the ebook market, and they write, let's say, 6 books a year. So they're very short books generally, but it's a very specific type of writing, but it's very, very popular. So that would be, if you wanted to, if your aim was to go in and make money, that's it. But, like I said, I write very dark books. There's a much smaller market for the type of books I write. But I believe in a kind of, you still have to write what you love. And I'm not particularly romantic. But I do, I write novellas. Having a number of books is very important. You cannot get away with just 1 book or 2 books. You have to be at 5, 10 and more than that. So it takes an amount of time. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It can certainly be done. On the non-fiction side, the people making the most money, people like Steve Scott, for example, who I've had on my podcast, are putting out books, again, kind of within a niche, like a series. He does books on habits. And the books are, maybe 30,000 words instead of 60,000 words. And people buy lots of the books in the same kind of model as the romance authors. And you can make very, very good money that way. So he's certainly had some 50 grand months, doing really, really well. So, and again, but it's about writing books that people want to buy, serving the niche, either with entertainment or with education or inspiration. So those are some kind of tips for fiction and nonfiction. But then making a living with your writing, I think, is a bit broader. In that I make my income is split between book sales and also affiliate income, professional speaking, other forms of income that come from my blog. Mm-hmm. So when I write a blog post, there might be an affiliate link in there, or it might attract somebody who's going to book me for speaking somewhere in the world. So that's also making a living with my writing. And just one more thing before we move on, I also want to say to people, always try and think about scalable income. So what I don't like about some of the online writing community is this kind of freelance writing, which to me is just like a day job because you're paid by the hour. Now, it's fine having that on one side as kind of the income model, but you have to create assets that will be scalable, as in will keep putting money in your pocket, so that you work for, say it takes me 2 months to write a book. That book can continue to earn me money for the rest of my life and 70 years after I die, and I don't have to write it again. Whereas freelance writing, for example, you have to keep doing it. You can't stop doing it because it's like being paid per hour. So think about scalable income, creating assets, which is why I love writing books, really.
Yeah, and so you've got a number of, in addition to your fiction, you've got books for authors. Can you tell us a little bit about what books you've written for authors?
Yeah, so again, it's kind of, as soon as I learn things, I want to write a book about it. So I wrote How to Market a Book. Well, the first book, How to Enjoy Your Job, is now called Career Change because I rewrote it once I had actually left my job. So it's called Career Change, and it's about the process I did for how to kind of move out, become an author. And then How to Market a Book, which I just finished rewriting late last year, was second edition. So that does what it says on the box. I mean, this is the other tip with nonfiction. Don't do clever titles. Yeah. Use keyword titles that mean people are actually searching for them. And then I've got a book called Public Speaking for Authors, Creatives and Other Introverts. And it's, 99% of it is for anybody who wants to do public speaking, but it's just my niche is introverts and authors and creatives. And then my latest one is Business for Authors, How to Be an Author Entrepreneur. And in that, I really explain how to go from just being an author to running a business as an author and all the different things you need to know to run a small business, with books as your primary product, which I know is hard, especially if people are writing their, the book of their heart. It might be difficult to think about it that way. But if you're running a business, so am I. It's just books are a product at the end of the day.
Definitely. And so how can either existing authors or potential authors benefit from working with you? You also do one-to-one consulting, is that correct?
I do very little of that, and I really I prefer not to, and I put people off booking me. I do occasionally do consulting, yes, but mainly I want people to, the Creative Pen for me is where I share 99% of stuff is free. So the Author 2.0 Blueprint is basically all my tips for being a successful author in this new online environment, which is at thecreativeben.com/blueprint, and that's sort of 90 pages, a full-length book on all of this stuff, including how to self-publish, and there's a video series that goes with it, and it's about 2 hours of videos with me teaching everything, and all that's free. And I'm very passionate about sharing that with people, and that's my kind of marketing. And and then of course there's the books, and I'm a professional speaker. But really, it's quite interesting. I am at that point of wanting to really shift into primarily writing fiction and also speaking. So that's really what I'm focusing on for 2015.
And could you tell us a little bit more about your fiction? Because you've mentioned how it's a bit on the dark side.
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 series. I have the Arcane series, which is action adventure. I say it's Dan Brown meets Lara Croft. So it's kind of kick-ass, but it's a British sort of psychologist, ex-military. He goes around the world solving supernatural stuff. So that's really fun, and that's my kind of blow stuff up. My favorite movie is Con Air. So that's one of my. I love Angelina Jolie and Salt and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. So that's my really sort of super fun series. And then I've got the London Psychic series, which is, I've been told, is that like Stephen King meets P.D. James. So it's a British detective who works alongside a psychic and again, solving kind of murder mysteries, but in the dark side of London. And that's actually the latest books are Gates of Hell, which is just out on the Arcane series, which was a lot of fun. So there's a lot of demonic stuff there, and I'm just about to start writing Deviance in the London Psychic series, which is delving into the sexual history of London, which is super fun. So yeah, I try and I like to do two things. I want to entertain people and write a really good story, but I also, my own kind of addiction to writing fiction is learning about topics. I do a lot of research trips, so most of the places that I write about I've been to. Gates of Hell opens at the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, and we went there last year. And so I love writing fiction. It's something that I recommend if people really want to try it. It's very fulfilling in many ways. But as you do, I like helping people too. So I won't stop podcasting. I won't stop blogging at the Creative Pen. But yeah, most of that stuff is it's free.
And just out of curiosity, how long does it take you from start to finish, like from first draft to like polished draft, to write a fiction novel? Because I think for most of us who have never attempted that, it just sounds like this monumental task.
Well, the first one certainly takes a lot longer because you don't know. I mean, if people are interested at thecreativepen.com/first novel, there's actually all the blog posts and videos that I did while I was writing the first novel. And it goes from, I think I'm going to write a novel, to I got a New York agent and, bestseller and all that. And that was about 16 months. But I did courses. I mean, there's so much you have to learn if you want to write fiction, point of view and dialogue and just so much. I think it's reasonably easy to write a nonfiction book. It's very difficult to write fiction.
Exactly. I mean, everything I do is nonfiction. So to me, the idea of writing a nonfiction novel is very exciting. But fiction, I would have no idea where to start.
Well, I think you have to really want to do it. So I'm a massive reader. Reading is my fun. So I've always read a lot of thrillers. So it stems from wanting to write books that I want to read. And I know some people don't have that. But there is a lot of stuff you have to learn. But so the first one probably did take 16 months, probably more than that. Now, once you have a series, so again, it's like with nonfiction, if you're writing to a specific audience and you're writing in a genre like, say you're doing books for female business people, there's certain topics you can cover that will hit that market. In the same way with fiction, once you have a character and a world. So my London Psychic series, I have a detective and a psychic in London. I mean, I don't have to reinvent my world. I don't have to reinvent my characters. I just have to find the story. So what I'm doing right now is going out and finding the story. So we did a big trip around London last weekend, Southwark, the South Bank of London, and looking at where the brothels used to be. And I'm reading a lot of books about that area and the graveyards and things. And I'm finding interesting stuff. And eventually, I believe, I've got it on my wall here, it says trust emergence. A story will emerge and then I will write it. And so it will probably take me, this one, 4 to 5 months.
Oh, okay.
With first draft, and I've got an editor. And editing is a bit like dating. You don't find your perfect editor the first time, but I now have the perfect editor for me at this point in my career, and so she really helps me with the story arc and the rewrites and everything. But so you definitely get quicker. And then of course novellas. This is another thing with shorter books. The next little book I have coming out is called One Day in New York, and it's a novella, it's a short novel, so it's not as long, and they take maybe 2 months.
Oh, okay. And how long is a novella? Is that 40,000?
No, it's between 20 and 40.
Oh, okay.
So, and you'll also find that those non-fiction authors like Steve Scott write between 20 and 30. Yeah, so this is the thing with publishing ebooks in a digital age. People don't. It's not the length that counts; it's the experience. So with fiction, have you written a good story that people appreciate for a reasonable price? And with non-fiction, you can give people 2 pages and it's worth it if they get what they need from that. So don't, in the olden days, or still, if you want a publishing contract, they're not going to let you write 20,000 words. And because it looks crap on the bookshelf, physical bookshelf, but on a digital shelf, it doesn't matter. So as long as the customer feels like they're getting value, if I pay $2.99 for a short nonfiction or fiction book and I am satisfied, then super. Why does it need to be any longer? So I would say to people, don't get hung up on this on length. It's more about value. So, and different audiences want different things. So if you are writing a fantasy novel, then you can't write 20,000 words, because fantasy readers want George R. R. Martin, they want 100,000 words, but you can charge more for that. So, it's more about value. Again, we're back to product.
Exactly.
And pleasing customers. Yeah. I mean, does that help you?
Yeah, that totally helps. I very, very useful. So Joanna, do you have any women mentors? Are there any women who inspire you, and that could either be in the business world or in the fiction world or writing world?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many. I mean, I read all the time. I would say, it's one of these things that annoys me, actually, is I get a lot of emails that say, can you mentor me? Like people emailing me, asking me to mentor them. And maybe I shouldn't be annoyed at this, but for me, I've had millions of mentors because I've read millions of books. So if I'm interested in someone, I will read their book. And I know it's not female, but I just one of the podcasts I listen to is the Tim Ferriss podcast, which is fantastic. And there's been some great women on there, but the last one I listened to is the Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I'm very interested in reading his book in terms of that. To me will be like a mentorship, because I'll learn things from him as an incredibly good businessman that, from his book. I don't need to talk to him. I can listen to that. So, but in terms of women, it's interesting. I was thinking about this. When I think of successful women right now and, being in Europe and the European situation, Christiane Lagarde, who is managing director of the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, between her and Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany, these 2 women are running, are shaping business for Europe and the world. And, when I think of kind of powerful business women, they are up there. I mean, Angela Merkel is right now kind of single-handedly standing between, Russia and the rest of Europe. So in that way, I mean, those are they are so far ahead on a pedestal for me that, and I don't aspire to be a politician, but in terms of, they are both business women, and what they do every day shapes business for all of us. So that's very inspiring. And then I guess on an internet level, somebody like Arianna Huffington, who really changed the face of what it means to be a journalist, or to run a blog. I mean, Huffington Post was a blog. And now what we think of, it's how all the newspapers have kind of changed to run that way. And what's so fascinating now is BuzzFeed, which started out as this kind of flippant thing, is now turning into the most powerful journalistic thing ever. So I think, so Arianna Huffington in that way. And then in terms of writers, right now I really like Gillian Flynn, who wrote Gone Girl, and she wrote the screenplay as well, which is an incredible feat. Most authors can't write screenplays. So I want to write a screenplay, so I'm very impressed with her. But actually, Gone Girl is my least favourite book by Gillian. Her book Dark Places and Sharp Objects, both of those 2 books I think are fantastic. And she's a real mentor in one way for me, because she successfully, when you read those 2 books, you think this woman has not censored herself, and that's what I aspire to. I aspire to write my truth and not shrink from what comes out of the dark side of my brain, and in that way, Carl Jung talks about embracing the shadow in order to be a whole person. And for me, I'm learning how to embrace my shadow and accept that side of me. And probably for women, that's harder. And it's easier for men, it's easier for Stephen King to write dark things.
Yeah, because it's okay for men to be dark.
Exactly. And so I'm trying, and I mean, I use JF Pen mainly because of the feedback I got when I used Joanna. It was like, how can a woman write this type of thing? It's like, oh, come on, it's ridiculous. So I think Gillian, I mean, and her book covers, they're all really dark. I like the fact she uses the hard G. It is Gillian, not Gillian, which I like. Oh, so I've given you a whole load of people there, but for me, anybody I read or anyone I listen to, I'm sure there are people listening who count you as a mentor, and I hope that people who listen to my podcast find people that they want as mentors as such. So I think nowadays we have podcasts, we have books, and we have internet, YouTube and stuff that we can find mentors in all kinds of ways.
Yes, definitely. They're out there. We just have to
find them. Yeah,
to find them and to read their stuff. As you said, you don't need to work with someone one-to-one and have a physical conversation with them for them to be a mentor to you.
No, it's interesting. I mean, talking about Arianna Huffington, her most recent book is called Thrive. Fascinating book because, she opens it with her passing out in her office, smacking her head on the table and bleeding all over the floor, and realizing that she was killing herself with work. And kind of is her whole thing now is talking about how do you integrate happiness and meditation and lifestyle into being a powerful business person, which is interesting. So I think reading people's books, think of whoever it is and find a book about them, or looking at their life either by them or about them. It's absolutely fascinating. You can learn so much, and most of my journals are full of notes that I've written on books that I've read, and that's been my mentorship, really.
Excellent. So Joanna, where can people find you online?
So thecreativepen.com, and that's pen with a double N, is, where you'll find lots of free stuff. As I said, the Author 2.0 Blueprint, which you can find at thecreativepen.com/blueprint. And my books are all on Amazon and Kobo and iBooks and Nook and all the rest. And my fiction at jfpen.com, and probably on Twitter at thecreativepen.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, no, it's been super fun. Thanks for having me, Holly.
I could talk to you all day, but our time is up, unfortunately.
No worries. Anytime.
You. Great. And thank you so much for listening. And remember to visit readytobloom.com/85 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Ready to Bloom podcast with your host, Holly Wharton. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to head over to iTunes and leave us a quick review of this podcast. Thank you.